Today everybody's asking if they should pull for Shoreline Fina and Daisy, and today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the tanks that are coming your way in FFBE so that you can decide whether or not this is the tank for you to invest in today, or if you want to roll your dice on the tanks of tomorrow. So let's get into it. Real quick before we get started, today's video isn't officially sponsored by Amazon Coins, but I do have my coins link down in the description, so if you're somebody who uses Amazon Coins for your in-app purchases for Final Fantasy Brave Exvius or War of the Visions or any other mobile game, go ahead and use that link if you want a discount, and it gives me a small kickback. It helps the channel keep going, and it helps me actually, pay for summons and things like that because they're quite expensive. So, before diving completely into Fina and Daisy's kit, I want to explain basically your situation going forward with magic tanks in Brave Exvius as we know it right now. So in the Japanese version of the game, there are currently three magic tanks that you can choose from, and that's it, as far as I know. There's probably some other crappier ones that I'm forgetting about, but there's basically three that are Neovision or Neovision Awakened that you can consider. First one is Monk Sabin of Kolts. Yes, the DPS who has decided to go ahead and be a magic tank. He's a magic tank and you can use him, and we'll look at him here in a second. Sacred Shield Charlotte got a Neovision Awakening on the JP side, and she's a pretty formidable magic tank as well. And then of course there's the Neovision base, Daisy and Fina that we're looking at right here. So basically, whether or not you're going to pull for Fina and Daisy depends on whether or not you feel like you can handle all the upcoming content with one of those three tanks. In addition to that, I'll add as a caveat that in Global Edition, we have a number of global exclusive magic tanks that could potentially see Neovision Awakenings, such as Chow, Lucas, and White Knight Noel. We know that we're heading into Christmas soon, so if you want to really roll the dice, if you really want to play, by the heart of the cards, then you could potentially stake on one of those three tanks getting a Neovision Awakening and roll with them as your magic tank. But the three that we know for certain and that we can put our money on going forward is Sabin, Charlotte, and Faisy, as everybody calls her. So first, let's go ahead and look at Sabin. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what each of these units are kind of capable of and give you an idea of how strong they are so that you can decide whether or not Faisy is the right choice for you. Sabin is a DPS that we all know and love who magically turns into a magic tank with his Neovision Awakening. So if you look at his kit, you can see that they added physical and magical cover into his kit. His magic cover has pretty low mitigation. It's not that good. We have 6-star, 7-star units with better mitigation on their cover, but he does have a Neovision Awakened stat line, so that helps him. As far as defensive utility goes, he has a 250% defense and spirit buff with an HP barrier that he can do on himself only twice per battle, so already we're starting to get the idea that his tanking kit is pretty bare bones. He has a Magnus ability he can use once per game that gives him a 70% general mitigation with 70% physical and magical mitigation. So on that one turn, he's going to be really hard to kill, but all the rest of the turns, he doesn't have the same sort of utility that we're used to with other magic tanks, especially if you're very used to Paladin Cecil. Paladin Cecil's kit is amazing, and it makes him so much tankier than he really deserves to be, because he's got all these supporting skills. Sabin really has none of the supporting skills. Any tank support skills that he has are Magnus abilities, and then he has kind of crappy mitigation cover on his covers, so that is kind of a big sad. His other Neovision ability buffs his LB damage and makes him break immune, which is not really relevant for anything at all. And then they give him some extra HP and attack as part of his Neovision passives, and he gets a Guts, which is good. I think all of the tanks that we look at today have Guts, but overall, he's the weakest of the Neovision tanks. He offers the least in terms of tankiness. As far as the tank goes, you're going to have to support him and prop him up quite a bit to get him to actually survive stuff, especially because his Brave Shift actually doesn't contribute to tanking at all. He Brave Shifts into a Mage, if you want to see the sprite. It looks pretty cool. I mean, he just throws his fist back and he's surrounded by wind and light and stuff, and he becomes a light chaining mage, which is cool, but has nothing to do with him being a tank. So overall, Monk Sabin of Kolts is a Neovision tank that you can use, but yeah, you can see that kit-wise, he's a little bit behind. Now, Sacred Shield Charlotte is the one that everybody's going to be asking about because just about everybody under the sun has her. She was an incredible tank when she came out, and people still used her to this day. I mean, you can still use her today if you want to, against all of our modern trials and things like that. And she's really remarkable. She's been a very sturdy, reliable tank all of this time. And the question is, will that remain true? I think, in general, the answer is going to be yes. You're still going to be able to use her. Let's look at her normal form first. In her normal form, the things that they add is primarily Demon and Reaper mitigation, which is really handy if you're fighting a Demon or a Reaper, or it's useless if you're not. So there's that. Her cover has slightly better mitigation than Sabin's, and it also mitigates damage taken by Demons and Reapers, which is really good. And then I believe you can use her standard cover, her awakened one from her base kit, and that actually has higher mitigation, and it gives her a spirit buff instead. So you actually have two cover options that you can use to suit your needs. In most cases, you're going to use her original one that has higher mitigation, but if you're fighting a Demon or a Reaper, you're going to use this one that has a lower overall mitigation, but increases your Demon and Reaper mid. So that's pretty cool. They also added a new Provoke onto Charlotte's kit that adds an HP barrier, which is good, and gives her re-raise. So you have those as options. And then she also gets dual cast finally in her kit that allows her to multicast all of her skills, which is something that she's really, really needed to, like, you know, nudge her up to Paladin Cecil levels. So overall in her kit, they added some good things. But they didn't really fundamentally change her. And then as far as Neovision passives go, she gets some extra mods on some of her chaining skills, which are cool. She gets a little more dark resistance, which is cool. Not really something that's going to really define her in the meta, but that's about all of the changes that come into her base form. When you Brave Shift her, this is actually where you get her best abilities. However, the main problem is, you'll see right here under the Brave Shift ability, it's available from turn 1. It only lasts for 2 turns, and you have a cooldown to Brave Shift again for 6 turns after that. So you're not going to be using her shifted form as much as I would like, because her shifted form has a lot of the coolest stuff. Again, she has her mitigation for Reapers and Demons. Same with her Provoke and her double cast, that's all the same. She still has her cover skill, that's all the same. This one actually has a higher mitigation to Demons and Reapers, so if you pop this off, like, Demons and Reapers are not going to touch you. The additional skill that she gets is a Magnus that mitigates magic damage by 90% for 2 turns to all allies, which is very strong if you know you're going into a magic threshold that would otherwise crush you. Pop that, you're going to survive, it's going to be great. And she also has a light magic chaining ability, or sorry, damage ability. It's more of a finishing ability. It's 1 hit, but it also gives her 75% general mitigation, which is really, really good. So these things are good. As far as passives and stuff go, it's kind of the same vein. Nothing pops out here that's super important, but her LB is actually really, really good. This is something that I'm a huge fan of, but the problem is you're only going to get this like once or twice every 6 turns. So this one gives her a better magic cover, so it has the same activation chance, but it increases the mitigation, and it mitigates magic damage by 80% for 2 turns to all allies, so it's slightly longer, and it gives her 500 MP, and it has a very cheap LB cost. So this is kind of like her original LB, except instead of getting 50% general mitigation, it gives you 80% magic mitigation. And it doesn't last, the cover lasts for 4 turns like her original LB does, but the mitigation only lasts for 2. If you could just use this LB like every 2 turns and stay in her shifted form, that would be incredible, but you can't do that, unfortunately. So I think you're going to use that like as a premeditated thing, like knowing you're going to go into a tougher set of turns, so you're going to pop that off, be a little bit tankier against magic damage. But overall, Charlotte, really awesome. Now let's talk a little bit about Shoreline, Fina, and Daisy, because they are ridiculous, frankly. I'm going to give you a quick overview, because there are other content creators who will give you an in-depth unit guide. That's not my content, that's not what I do, but I'm going to give you some highlights. Their TMR and their STMR are really, really good for tanking. Lots of HP and Spirit and MP on the TMR materia, and then Guts with a ton of HP and a bunch of Spirit on the Hat, which is the STMR. Really great. You're going to use them in basically every battle from the minute you get them. So ultimately, really, really good. I don't think I would STMR Moogle extra ones, but I would definitely, yeah, hold on to those. Those are really, really good. The Vision card is also very good. If you missed Yoshikiri, this is a comparably good one. It's probably better for tanks than Yoshikiri's would be. because it gives you a lot of extra base HP, which scales with your HP percentage multipliers, I believe, and then it gives you a bunch of extra spirit as well. So, and it gives you percentage spirit when equipped with heavy armor, which complements them as magic tanks very well. Really, really good. You'll use it in every battle that you use a Neo Vision magic tank in. So those are really good. Now, looking at their kit, like I said, I'm only going to give you a brief overview because Faisy has one of the most stacked kits I've seen in the game as far as like all of the different things she can do. She's basically like Cecil on crack, kind of. It's ridiculous. So she has stat buffs that imbue light. She can revive allies. She can heal allies. She has a provoke with 75% mitigation that lasts for 3 turns, and it can also mitigate aquatic and dragon damage. She has 90% and 80% element buffs to 6 different elements, split across 2 different skills. She has MP Restore with LB fill. She has Recover here. She has an HP barrier on a Magnus skill that she can do. She can mitigate magic damage by 75% for 3 turns. She can mitigate magic damage for 2 turns by 80%, and that applies a re-raise. So between these 2 cooldown skills right here, you get pretty close to full uptime on 75 to 80% magic mitigation, which is just absurd. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of trials actually stop hurting your damage character, so it's maybe not always going to be super relevant, but still insane to keep that up all the time. She has a big spirit buff she can apply to herself, and this is all just the stuff in her base form. The big thing that is a new feature on her is that when the battle starts or when she's revived, she auto covers. So she's the first character in the game that has a passive that activates a cover skill. So as soon as you enter the battle, before anything else happens, she puts up a magic cover. It's not the strongest mitigation, but this means that if you die and raise her, she doesn't have to actually take a turn to reapply a magic cover. A magic cover will just be reapplied automatically. And because of the way that brave shifting is coded, when you brave shift into her other form, this cover is also reactivated. So you may not ever actually have to press a cover skill when using her, depending on, you know, the fight and all that other stuff. It's crazy, okay? This is the reason that people are pulling for, and it does make some trials a little bit easier to have, you know, auto cover on a character. Her LB also provides it provides general mitigation, which a lot of tanks have on their LBs, but the big thing for her, if you're a Dark Visions simp, is that you get 25% bonus magic and physical damage to the light element for your entire party. So if you're a simp for Dark Visions, she's basically a must-have, because I don't know anybody else that'll give you an external 25% light damage buff, so worth keeping in mind. Real quick, diving into her Brave Shift, and for anybody who cares to look at the sprite, no, I'm not going to indulge you. I don't want to show up on an FBI list. All right. Her shifted form is essentially similar. Most of the stuff is the same. You still get the auto cover, you still get the healing, you still get the provoke, you still get the element resist, you still get the re-raise, you still get the magic mitigation, you get all that stuff in her shifted form, and she can shift pretty freely between her 2 forms. There might be like one turn of overlap, I believe. Yeah, cooldown to Brave Shift is 2 turns. But the main thing that it adds in her shifted form is a break of 75% to a single target. So if you need breaks, this is the way to go. It also adds an Earth Imperil and Earth Imbue for the entire party, which is awesome. Again, something that is probably useful for Dark Visions or just for trials in general. But that's the most of the unique, interesting stuff on her shifted form. And then on her shifted form, the other thing that changes is her LB. So instead of buffing light damage, it buffs earth damage instead. So there's that. I feel like I just was like auctioning off an abandoned storage unit. I was talking so fast because I'm trying to cover as much of her kit as possible. So with that, it goes without saying that Faisy has easily the best support kit of any of the tanks in the game. But how much tankier is she than the other characters? That's what we want to look at next. So I've gone ahead and done a few builds with a few different characters to give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of how much tankier Faisy is than some of the other tank options that you have out there. I've gone ahead and done a magical EHP build for Cecil and then the other 3 Neo Vision tanks so that we can kind of get a comparison of where everybody's sitting at. And I'm using STMRs, but I'm not using stuff that you can't use in global, such as like stacking certain prohibited materials. So these are builds that you could very well do in the global version. Starting with Cecil, This Cecil that I've built is a very fat Cecil. This is probably one of the tankiest Cecils you could possibly build in Global. And he comes out to, and this number here, this is like the measure of your EHP, okay, your effective HP, is 65 million. It's an arbitrary number that like measures how tanky in general he is. So he comes in at a score of 65 million, which is quite high. And this is why he's been the god magic tank this whole time in Global since he came out, because he has one of the best tank support kits in the game, and he has a ton of mitigation, and he has a really high effective HP, which is what this is right here. Now, if we go to our next tankier tank, okay, above him, we're going to go ahead and look at Monk Sabin of Kolts, okay. Sabin is interesting because you're going to probably build him as a Spirit True Double Hand character, because he gets True Double Hand Spirit, and he can equip staves, and you could use Yoshikiri's card in this build. On the JP side, I don't have a way to add that in, so I've used Aerith's instead. But as you can see, he's about 50% tankier than Cecil, just from pure stats alone. That's not accounting for their kits or for buffs or anything like that. So with buffs, you know, the gap between characters actually widens. So in Sabin's case, you can see he's got 44,000 HP, and Sabin, you should know, has more HP than any other character in the game right now. In JP, he has just absolute shitloads of HP. You can build him up to over 50,000 HP, which is, it's really, really insane. But his Spirit is actually pretty similar to Cecil's, if I remember right. Yeah, Cecil's at 2173 in this build, and Sabin is at 2095. So he actually has a little bit less, but he could be built to have more. So overall, Sabin is a tankier character, but he does have a weaker tanking kit. He's going to rely a lot on external support to make that stat block work for him. You can bet that I'm going to try my best to do that because I just love Sabin. He's like my favorite character in the game, so I got to do that. But that's just to kind of show you the direction we're going with Neovision tanks in terms of stat lines. Now, if we were to jump to Neovision Awakened Sacred Shield Charlotte, she's actually about 20% tankier than Sabin just in her base kit. Again, before buffs, before mitigation, before skills, before any of that. You can build her out as a Neovision character to be very, very chunky. In this particular build, I have her at 38, almost 39,000 HP with 2,800 spirit, between 28 and 2,900 spirit, which is a lot. That is another 800 or 900 spirit above Sabin, but about 6,000 or 7,000 HP below Sabin. So that does balance out a little bit in some regards, but she is still about 20% tankier than he is, with a comparably whaley build. And yeah, and then you factor in the kits, and she just blows them out of the water. She's got better mitigation on her cover, she has general mitigation, she has magic mitigation, you can chain with her, you can do a whole bunch of stuff with Charlotte that you just can't do with Sabin. So even though her like shifted form has some limitations to how long you can use it or how much you can benefit from it, it is still better than Sabin, who brave shifts into a mage and doesn't do anything to help you with tanking at all. So that being said, I think it's pretty clear that Charlotte is a clear cut above Sabin in terms of tankiness, which breaks my heart, but that's how you know I'm being honest, is that I'm telling you news that I wouldn't want to hear myself. So yeah. Now that being said, let's move on to Summer Fina and Daisy and look at them. She is actually a little bit tankier, like only a little bit tankier. She's only like less than 5% tankier, just from a build perspective. So you can see Charlotte is at 110 million effective HP versus 116 on Summer Fina and Daisy. So you're talking about like not much. You're talking about less than a 5% increase in tankiness between Charlotte and Faisy. So what you're actually going to be buying is the kit. And Faisy has a really remarkably strong kit. If you care about Dark Visions, I guarantee you the next Dark Visions is going to be #1 clears that include Fina and Daisy in some of them. Like, there's no way that it doesn't, because she has the elemental buffs and the auto cover and things like that that can help you prevent preemptive attacks from nuking your team, and it allows you to build your team stronger. So overall, crazy kit. And then in this build, I did use her own card and her own TMR. On the other ones, I did not use them. Just so that, you know, it was fair. Like, there's no way you would build Charlotte with Faisy's card, or Sabin using Faisy's card. You would just build Faisy instead. So there's that to consider. One other thing that's worth considering in comparing these builds, I actually built Faisy to EX +1, since that's something that you can very easily do. I built the other two NVA tanks to EX +3, just to give them the best fighting chance. So it is a little bit more skewed in their favor. It kind of brings the results a little bit closer together, because on the extreme end, you could UOC, Sabin, or Charlotte all the way up to EX3 if you wanted to. I do not recommend it, but you could. And then with Faisy, most people are just going to have her at EX1, because you're not gonna wanna you know, try and pull until you get EX +2. It's just not worth that level of investment. But yeah, that's just notes for you to know with regards to that comparison. So then we have to ask ourselves, how effective or like how much does Faisy actually matter for upcoming content? And the answer is that she makes a lot of upcoming content much more convenient and much easier to do, but she's not a requirement. You can beat everything that is currently out in the Japanese version of the game using Sacred Shield Charlotte as your tank. We're gonna go to her picture because she looks dope. She just looks awesome, okay? You can beat everything in the game using Sacred Shield Charlotte as your tank. It is worth knowing that it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder for some of those trials. You may not make the turn count on some of them, because I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the main reasons that I'm like really frustrated with Brave Exvius is because the Japanese version of the game will release a trial with an extreme mission on it, like beat this in 15 turns, and the only way that you can beat it in 15 turns is if you pull on the banner that came out at the same time as it. Like they release the answer to the trial at the same time as the trial itself, and I know they've done things like that before, but it's never been like to this degree. So a good example of this is that one trial that will come out in the future is one where the boss does a preemptive AoE magic attack that imperils you to dark by 200% and then damages you. So really hard to survive, really obnoxious to build around. But if you have Faisy, you just bring Faisy with dark resist, and she auto covers it, you know, before the battle even starts. So it's like that, but like on every banner going forward. Really aggravating to me. I feel like it's very discouraging, and it takes the wind out of people's sails. It takes away the creativity and the fun of the game. So that being said, Faisy is going to be integral to a lot of clears. To beat those turn counters or to get top scores in Dark Visions, you're just going to see her. She's going to be part of that. So you have to decide for yourself whether or not that's something you care about and to what degree you care about it. I know for me, my plan is to actually just stick with Charlotte, and as much as I can get away with, I'm going to use Sabin because I love him. But my plan is to use Charlotte just because I really don't like Faisy's sprite at all. It's not for me. It's not my style. Like if they literally took that whole kit and shoved it into like like someone else, literally anybody else, anybody who looked better than this in any amount, I probably would have pulled for them. But yeah, no, I actually just hate the unit that much that I'm willing to say, I don't want your kit. I don't want anything you're selling. I'm willing to go a little bit more poverty, live with Sacred Shield Charlotte, and just deal with the challenges of the content. And the bottom line is, if a piece of content comes out and I can't clear the turn count mission or whatever on the day that it comes out, that's okay. I'll just wait and come back and do it later. I think at worst you miss out like on 5 UOCs or something like that. I think that's what a lot of those missions have, which is a pain. It feels really scummy. It feels really bad. I hate it. I wish they wouldn't do it, but they're doing it anyways, so we just kind of have to live with that reality. So to sum it up very simply, should you pull for Fina in Daisy? I think a lot of people should seriously consider it. I think they are one of the best investments that you can make for your account in the game. That being said, if you have your eye on a different prize, there's nothing wrong with that. Just know what you're going up against, okay? My eye is on Terra. I really want the FF6 banners. I know that there's a lot of people who are looking forward to Kingdom Hearts, and they want Kingdom Hearts characters instead. I would rather save for the new Neovision Lightning, who just came out on JP. Those are the sorts of things that I'm much more interested in than Fina and Daisy, whose sprite I hate, and I can survive without by using Sacred Shield Charlotte. So you guys go ahead and make your own decision about what you want to do for your magic tanking. I also think there's a fair chance you can roll the dice on White Knight Noel, Lucas, or Chow getting a Neovision upgrade. One of those three are like bound to. I would be shocked if all three of them didn't. So that's my gamble is I'll use Sacred Shield Charlotte and one of those ones if they come out. That's going to be my magic tank plan. So let me know in the comments. I want to know what you guys are doing. Are you going to pull for Faisy? Are you going to use Charlotte instead? Are you going to use Sabin instead? I want to know about that. Tell me in the comments. If you're wanting to pull for Faisy on Friday, we're going to have a live stream same as usual, I'm not going to be pulling for Faisy myself, but I'm going to open up the stream to anybody who wants to pull and share in the stream luck. I'll have you know, everybody who pulled on the Elena stream, every single person got Elena, so the stream luck is true, it is real. Every single person pulled Elena without a safety net or guarantee. So if you want stream luck, you let me know on Discord. The link is in the description. We can set you up. You can do your pulls on the stream. Enjoy the stream luck. Get Faisy. Thanks again, everybody, for watching today's video, and I'll see you next time.